It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10. Our top story. A dictator who better move fast. Donald Trump hits out at Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky in an escalating war of words following criticism of peace talks with Russia.
Unfortunately, President Trump, with who we have great respect as a leader, and the American people who support us, but unfortunately, he lives in this disinformation space.
We'll be live in Kiev and here in Florida tonight, where President Trump is about to speak. Also tonight, a bumpy road to lower inflation after an unexpected jump to 3%. We analyse what that means for the cost of living. A new law cracking down on selling knives to children could increase prison sentences in memory of Ronan Kanda, who was killed in 2022. Plus,
it's really, really horrible just to see it, and you know, every time we look at it, there's another bit that's been chipped away at it.
Residents in a Surrey town say they're frightened to live in their homes overlooking a huge sinkhole. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30 right through to midnight. Good evening. The President of Ukraine has been dealt another blow by Donald Trump today, calling him a dictator without elections in a long post on the Truth Social platform. Volodymyr Zelensky earlier said the US president had been taken in by Russian disinformation. Their relationship has publicly deteriorated after the meeting between Russia and the United States was criticised for not including Ukraine. And tonight, an update from Sir Keir Starmer, who offered his support to President Zelensky. Well, coming up, we're expecting to hear from Donald Trump, who's holding a conference in Miami. But first, for the people of Ukraine, the future has never been more uncertain. Over the last 10 years, Russia has taken huge chunks out of Ukraine's territory. In 2014, it annexed Crimea, and over the next few months and years, Russian-backed separatists took over parts of the eastern Donbass region. After the full-scale invasion of 2022, Russia took more land in the east and parts of the south, despite counterattacks by Ukraine. Russia now occupies more than 112,000 square kilometres of Ukrainian land, with the front line stretching for over 1,000 kilometres. And attacks on civilians continue, with a barrage of drones injuring 4 people in Odessa overnight. Our security and defence editor, Deborah Haynes, reports now from Kiev.
Even as Washington and Moscow talk peace, Ukraine is pummeled by Russia's war. A civilian energy site ablaze after a drone strike in the port city of Odessa. But enemy fire is no longer the only threat, as Donald Trump unleashed an extraordinary attack against Ukraine's president. Posting on social media, he called Volodymyr Zelensky a dictator who refuses to hold elections and warned him he'd better move fast or he's not going to have a country left. I love Ukraine, but Zelensky has done a terrible job. His country is shattered and millions have unnecessarily died. The outburst came after Mr. Zelensky responded to an earlier verbal battering, including a false claim he only has a 4% approval rating.
We understand where it's coming from, Russia, and we have evidence that these figures are being discussed between the US and Russia. Unfortunately, President Trump, whom we deeply respect as the leader of a nation we highly value, is also caught in this disinformation space. I would like to see more truth from Trump's team.
One hope is the arrival of this man to Kyiv.
Good morning, y'all. How are you doing today?
Keith Kellogg is the US envoy to Ukraine, here for talks with Mr. Zelensky.
We're going to listen. We understand the need for security guarantees. It's very clear to us the importance of sovereignty of this nation and independence of this nation as well. And part of my mission is to sit and listen.
Welcome words, but do they carry weight in the White House?
Do we have shared values? Do we share the value of democracy, international legislation? Do we respect the internationally accepted borders? If so, then we should protect them. We should unite and protect them. If not, then there's a big question mark.
What is your message to Donald Trump?
He is smart, he is brave, he is powerful. I want him to use this, his intelligence and his power in the right way.
Kyiv also preparing, though, for that not to be the case.
Ukraine's president clearly felt he had no choice but to speak out, given the growing criticism from Washington. But it's a high-risk move, given his reliance on US military support, the premium Donald Trump places on loyalty, and the fact that any friction between the US and Ukraine only plays into one person's hands, and that's Vladimir Putin's.
Russia's leader is already enjoying a rekindling of relations and could soon hold talks with President Trump in person.
We have a desire to hold such a meeting, and I would like to hold this meeting. But I repeat once again, it needs to be prepared so that it brings a result.
A chilling prospect for Ukraine. But this country hasn't yet given up hope. It has little else to cling to. Deborah Haynes, Sky News, Kyiv.
Well, Deborah joins us now from Kyiv, and our US correspondent Mark Stone is in Miami. Deborah, to you first of all, what does Ukraine do now? Does President Zelensky need to start thinking of a world without the support of the United States?
Well, the Ukrainian president used his nightly address to say that he is counting on the unity and courage of Ukrainians, on his relationship with his European partners, and on what he described as America's pragmatism, saying that America needs success as much as Ukraine. He also received a welcome boost, no doubt, from Britain's Prime Minister, who picked up the phone to Volodymyr Zelensky, and then his office released a statement pointedly describing the Ukrainian leader as Ukraine's democratically elected leader, and saying that during World War II, Winston Churchill, and remember Donald Trump is a big fan of him, he didn't have elections either, clearly pointed at that excoriating criticism from the US president of Volodymyr Zelensky. On the ground, Ukraine's president will be meeting with Keith Kellogg tomorrow, an indication there is still hope that maybe American strength can bring a just peace. But there is also, like you asked, signs of a potential plan B, with Ukraine's president saying that he's speaking to his European allies about how they could maybe step in, fund the military effort here, fund the purchase of American weapons and take the place of America. But that is a tall order.
Mark, to you now. We've heard night after night comments from President Trump, and we're expecting to hear more in a few moments' time.
Yes, he is speaking at a Saudi investment conference here in Miami Beach. We're not sure whether he will address what he had said on Truth Social from Mar-a-Lago this morning. The suggestion is that he might, given that he is usually pretty free-flowing. Look, I think that it's not just the black and white of what he said, but it's the speed with which the relationship has deteriorated, not just with Ukraine, but more broadly with Europe as well. We saw the comments from Pete Hegseth, his defence secretary, last week in Brussels. Then it was the Vice President, J.D. Vance, speaking in Munich. And then over the course of the weekend, it ratcheted up to this extraordinary series of words from Donald Trump today. And I think what baffles European leaders is that if late last week their view was that maybe Donald Trump doesn't actually have a clear strategy for Ukraine, that maybe what he is doing was some sort of a sort of Machiavellian masterstroke of diplomacy, I think that the black and white of the language that he used today to call Volodymyr Zelensky a dictator, I think it changes everything, and I think everyone has really been caught off guard. What I'm interested in is the extent to which those around Donald Trump believe this. Yes, we've heard J.D. Vance today backing up what Donald Trump has said. But more broadly, more widely, what about Keith Kellogg, who will meet Zelensky tomorrow? He is the point man on Ukraine. What does he really think about all this? We know, too, that within the Republican Party, they are very upset. We've heard from the former president, Mike Pence, today, from Lindsey Graham, a top Republican senator. They do not share the views that Donald Trump said today.
OK, Mark and Deborah, thank you both. We will, of course, be back to Mark as soon as we have sight of Donald Trump. The Chancellor has said the government is going further and faster to deliver economic growth after inflation rose higher than expected today. Inflation ticked up steeply from 2.5% in December to 3% in January, well over the Bank of England's target of 2%. The increase in inflation is a knock to the chances of any further interest rate cuts, which is currently at 4.5%. Sky's business correspondent Gurpreet Narwan reports.
Inflation, it's back on an unpredictable path, with food, airfares and VAT on private schools driving the measure higher. And parents at this stay-and-play cafe in Harrogate are worried.
The mortgage is up for renewal next year, and it's just everything's so expensive, isn't it? So it is a worry. Obviously, with the two children, they're very expensive.
Some more pain from them.
My two younger children are going to have a very different experience than my older children because we used to be able to take them out on days out. We can't do that with the younger two.
Hannah, the owner here, hasn't paid herself a wage for the last 18 months.
The only way that we can survive is obviously by putting the prices up, but then it puts the customers off coming and, well, they can't afford to come. So, yeah, it's a bit of a catch-22 situation.
But inflation will climb even higher. It's expected to hit 3.7% later this year because of higher energy prices. Policymakers, however, are sanguine. Right now, they are more worried about weak growth. The Bank of England is confident that inflation will eventually come back down to target. It means that policymakers will continue cutting interest rates this year, even as the headline rate of inflation rises. They're going to have to hold their nerve. If the last few years have taught us anything, it's that inflation can be an unpredictable beast. And if it stays high while growth stalls, well, that's not a place the Chancellor wants to be. Businesses say she's not helping the cause by ramping up employers' national insurance contributions.
We're talking about 1.2 million for Wetherspoon a week.
A week?
Yes, it's a lot, and it's more for pubs and hospitality than for supermarkets because we've got more labour costs per pint.
Wetherspoon's pre-tax profits jumped to £74 million last year, but smaller businesses are less well insulated.
Beef has gone up ×4 over the last 15 years.
Paul Kendall runs Kendall's Farm Butchers in Pateley Bridge.
I feel now you have to just be careful with how you're going to expand. I've thought about doing a deli and expanding the range, but just at the moment I'm sitting on my hands and just seeing how this plays out. So instead of going for the growth, more protection of what we've got.
High inflation might end up being a bump in the road, but businesses and customers fear it will be a long journey back to brighter economic prospects. Gurpreet Narwan, Sky News.
People caught selling knives to under-18s could be jailed for up to 2 years under new rules being introduced by the government to tackle knife crime. It will be known as Ronan's Law, in memory of 16-year-old Ronan Kander, who was stabbed to death in Wolverhampton in a case of mistaken identity. His mother has been speaking to Sky's national correspondent, Tom Parmenter, about the measures.
His bench stands where Ronan once played. And it's in his name that the law is changing. Because it is far too easy for teenage killers like his to buy a machete and a sword online.
These measures was taken years ago. I believe my son would have been here. My last breath is dedicated to Ronan. And I will continue to fight for my son and to make sure that whatever's gone wrong is corrected.
The government's crackdown will see tougher prison sentences for anyone selling knives to under-18s, and a new offence of possessing an offensive weapon with intent for violence.
How you doing?
We have a duty to protect all of the young people that are here, and so I don't want anything past that barrier that I think could be used as a weapon.
In the 3 years since Ronan's murder, there's been further senseless killings in Wolverhampton. At this youth centre, creating a safe space has never been more important.
It's scary for us, it's scary for parents. I would love to see the government looking more at how they intervene early with young people so that they don't get to the point that Ronan's perpetrators got to.
It matters because you have children living with the threat of knife crime every day.
It feels like honestly terrifying because I should be walking around feeling safe, feeling happy, not be feeling scared that I might just get stabbed any second now.
There's kids collecting knives thinking it's cool, buying even from the littlest of pocket knives to the biggest of zombie knives, and like I've seen once online on a TikTok video someone with a full-on samurai sword. Like knives are hobbies to kids nowadays. It's really crazy how the world and England just got like this.
Retailers will now have to report the bulk buying of knives, which could then be sold on social media. The clampdown cannot come soon enough for parents across the UK.
Do I feel safe to let them out on the street? Definitely not. This is the only place they're allowed to come. They're not allowed to walk the streets until the government can improve knife crime statistics, because what's the alternative? Might some be another name on the news that's had a stabbing? Not a chance.
Nobody should be living with this fear. And while enforcing stricter rules is a start, there is much more work to do. Tom Parmenter, Sky News, Wolverhampton.
The Vatican says the Pope is in a stable condition in hospital tonight, showing a slight improvement. The 88-year-old is being treated for pneumonia in both lungs. Sky's Lisa Holland is in Rome for us tonight. So, Lisa, we know the Vatican saying that there's a slight improvement. That's what they said earlier on. What's his condition at the moment?
Well, Gillian, the Vatican is briefing 3 times a day currently, and I think that alone gives you a sense of the gravity of the situation and just how concerned people are about the health of Pope Francis. Now, the latest update a few hours ago revealed that his condition is stable. It's not described as critical, but the reality is he is fighting pneumonia in both lungs. Now, people here know that he was taken into hospital with bronchitis last Friday. Then he developed a respiratory tract infection. And the fact is that his condition has deteriorated to the point of developing the pneumonia in both lungs. We know that today he had a visit from the Italian Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni. That was a 20-minute visit. We understand that she wore a mask during that visit, as if it were the days of COVID, because people are so concerned about the spread of any kind of infection. However, on the upside, Vatican officials are saying that the infection markers have come down slightly. That is a positive. And also, the Italian Prime Minister said that during their visit that the Pope was alert and that they even shared a little joke. But still, he remains in hospital, and now for the 6th night in hospital away from the Vatican.
OK, Lisa, thank you for the update. Residents in Surrey, where a huge sinkhole has opened up, say they no longer feel safe in their homes. A number of properties have been evacuated and a major incident has been declared in Godstone, where the sinkhole now measures around 60 feet or 19 metres. Sky's Shaman Freeman-Powell has more.
A sinkhole in the middle of a sleepy Surrey village, swallowing up the road, forcing businesses to close and residents to move elsewhere. The gaping void first appeared on Monday, continuing to grow in size, and is now thought to be at least 20 metres, the length of 2 double-decker buses. Those who live here are shocked by the sight, but not surprised.
You get so many heavy lorries come down here during the week. You know, they're 30, 40-tonne things. It was a disaster waiting to happen, I think, to be honest.
There's lots of speculation about what caused the cavity. Caves lie beneath, and heavy vehicles carrying goods over time could have worn down the surface. After the road opened up, though, a water pipe burst, leaving those living directly above without access to power or water. It's been almost 2 days since some residents here were woken up in the early hours and told that they'd better leave. 30 properties were evacuated, but residents have no idea when they may return home. Later in the evening, residents met up, hoping for an opportunity to ask local leaders the important questions. But when they arrived, the doors were shut and no one was there to give them answers.
We're okay.
Frustrating for residents like Nush, whose home could soon be consumed.
I don't feel like it's ever going to be safe for me to go back into it. Honestly, when you look out, that's kind of where my children's bedrooms are, and it just doesn't feel safe anymore.
Surrey police have warned residents to avoid the area, and the county council has declared a major incident.
We were just asking people to avoid the area just because there are a lot of crews on site at the moment from not only Surrey Highways but all the utilities and the technicians as well. As soon as we can declare the sites as safe and stable, we will let residents know.
Authorities remain on site assessing the damage and ensuring the safety of the area, whilst residents are set to meet to discuss the sudden disruption that's emerging beneath them. Siobhan Freeman-Powell, Sky News, Godstone in Surrey.
The bodies of 4 Israeli hostages are expected to be handed over to the Red Cross by Hamas tomorrow morning under the Gaza ceasefire agreement. It includes 2 children from the Bibas family and their mother, Shiri, who Hamas say were killed in an Israeli airstrike while they were being held hostage. The children's father, Yarden, was released early this month. The body of retired journalist Odell Lifshitz will also be handed over. Hamas says it will release 6 living hostages on Saturday. A British journalist has gone missing in Brazil. Family and friends last heard from Charlotte Alice Peet when she was in Sao Paulo on the 8th of February. They say the 32-year-old, who worked as a freelance foreign correspondent, planned to go to Rio de Janeiro before disappearing. At least 2 people have died after a mid-air collision involving 2 small planes in southern Arizona. Each plane had 2 people on board when they collided on the outskirts of Tucson. One plane managed to land, the other hit the ground and caught fire. Well, let's return to the United States now. And the Trump administration has not only shaken up foreign policy, but domestically, tens of thousands of American jobs have been cut by Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency. Our US correspondent, Martha Kellner, has been speaking to some of the people who have been laid off under the cost-cutting scheme.
National parks like Yosemite in California are often considered the crown jewels of America. Millions of people visit here from around the world, but beauty offers no protection from brutal, sweeping job cuts. Workers, including park rangers, locksmiths, even emergency medical staff, fired by Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency.
I received a termination notice on Friday at 4:22 p.m.
Oleg was fired from his job cleaning park facilities, including the toilets.
Why am I a target? I don't make that much money. I make around $40,000 a year. Like, why me? Why am I the fat? But I chose to come serve the American people and the international community because I truly believe that our national parks are truly one of America's best ideas.
What would you say to President Trump, to Elon Musk, if you could?
I'd like to tell him, come look at my bathrooms and tell me if I'm essential or not.
National park workers are the latest to come into Musk's firing line. His department has already cut 95,000 jobs across government. This is clearly a long way from Washington, D.C., but it's in places like this that the true extent of Elon Musk's move fast and break things approach to national government is being felt. He instituted similar slash and burn cost cutting at his private companies like Tesla. But national parks, some would argue, are a different beast.
It just equates to money, but there's no money that can replace this.
Mm-hmm. How much will it affect places like this?
A whole lot, right? The ramifications are consequential.
I think that's sort of the discouraging thing, is trying to explain to your kids why the billionaires don't see it.
from our perspective as like everyday people. How do you convince people that don't understand
that this matters?
Yeah, that this matters, and that the natural world, that we're interconnected with the natural world, and that we're actually doing ourselves a disservice when we think these green spaces are not a part of our own lives.
President Trump and Elon Musk would say there is a huge amount of inefficiency in government.
It's horrible. Oh, it's so true. And it's been going on for decades. So, yeah, I'm all up for what he's doing, what Elon Musk is doing. I'm supportive. You know, we'll see. Agencies like the National Park Service, I think those should be last.
There is seemingly no order to these cuts, and critics would say no rhyme or reason to who stays and who goes. Only the promise that there's more to come. Martha Kellner, Sky News, Yosemite National Park.
Emma Raducanu has thanked people for their messages of support after becoming upset by a man in the crowd. The British tennis star was approached by a man described as displaying fixated behaviour at the Dubai Tennis Championships. The 22-year-old approached the umpire's chair, clearly upset during her straight-set second-round defeat to Karolina Muchova. The man was later removed from the front few rows of seats and has now been banned from all WTA events, pending a threat assessment. On Instagram, she thanked her fans for their messages of support, saying it was a difficult experience. Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll bring you the Donald Trump speech as it happens. This is the live shot from Miami, Florida. And we'll also take a first look at tomorrow's newspapers in the press preview. Tonight, we're joined by the Times chief political correspondent, Aubrey Allegretti, and the Daily Mail's Whitehall editor, Claire Ellicott. Amongst the stories we'll be discussing, this on the front of the Financial Times. The headline, Trump calls Zelensky a dictator in deepening rancor over Russia talks. Do stay with us, we'll be right back.
evacuation. You must leave.
For many people, Harvey is far from over.
People here believe the water will be this deep for weeks.
I'm Greg Milam, and I'm Sky's chief North of England correspondent.
Are you trying to run me over, Sir Philip?
No, go away.
Look like it, sir. Will you respond to those who made accusations, Sir Philip?
Can you go away?
Sky News, the full story first.
Welcome back. You're watching Sky News. In just a moment, the press preview. A first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. But first, our top stories. Ukraine's president has been dealt another blow by Donald Trump today, who called him a dictator without elections. President Trump is about to address a conference in Miami. Inflation has risen steeply in January to 3%, well above the Bank of England target of 2%. The Vatican says the Pope is in a stable condition in hospital tonight, showing a slight improvement. He's being treated for double pneumonia. You are watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. It's time to see what's making the headlines with the Times chief political correspondent Aubrey Allegretti and the Daily Mail's Whitehall editor Claire Ellicott. They'll be with us from now until just before midnight. So let's see what's on some of those front pages for you now. Well, the Financial Times leads with the intensifying war of words between the presidents of the US and Ukraine, with Donald Trump levelling accusations of dictatorship against Volodymyr Zelensky, who in return accused Mr. Trump of being in a bubble of disinformation. The Telegraph also emphasises the Trump attack on the Ukrainian president as a dictator, also noting that Sir Keir Starmer chose to side with Volodymyr Zelensky. Trump appalls world with dictator blast at Zelensky. That's the Daily Mail's verdict. More on that story with The Guardian, which focuses on the deepening rift between the US and Ukraine. And in The Eye, noting that Zelensky accused Trump of living in a disinformation bubble on the Ukrainian